All right, and welcome. Here is another problem for us to solve, and it's asking you to rationalize the denominator. So when we're talking about rationalizing the denominator, you're pretty much trying to get a regular number, not all these radicals, in our denominator. So we want to multiply the top and bottom by the conjugate of your denominator. So you're pretty much looking at your denominator, and you write everything the same, except instead of a minus, you put a plus. And if it was a plus, you put the minus. You do the opposite. And that's how you do the conjugate. So the conjugate of our denominator would be 4 square root of 6 plus 3 square root of 2. And you have to do the same thing to your numerator. 4 square root of 6 plus 3 square root of 2. What's going to end up happening is we're going to put parentheses around this, and you're going to end up having to use the distributive property, okay, to multiply it. First, outer, inner, last. So let's do the numerator first. I'm going to do the first terms, 3 square root of 6 times 4 square root of 6. Okay, so when I multiply that, 3 times 4 is 12. And then 6 times 6 is 36, so the square root of 36. That's first. Then I have to do the outer. 3 square root of 6 plus 3 square root of 2. So I'm just going to say plus 3 times 3, which is 9. And then 6 times 2, which is 12. So that's square root of 12. And then I'm going to do my inner. 5 square root of 2 times 4 square root of 6. 5 times 4 is 20, so I'm going to say plus 20 here. And then 2 square root of 2 times square root of 6 is square root of 12. Notice how you only multiply the numbers that are outside the radical together, and the numbers that are inside the radical, you multiply them together. And then the last term, which is 5 square root of 2 times 3 square root of 2. 5 times 3 is 15, so that's going to be plus 15. And then square root of 2 times square root of 2 is the square root of 4. All of that is going to be over. Now let's do our denominator. 4 square root of 6 times 4 square root of 6 is going to be 4 times 4 is 16. 6 times 6 square root of 36. And then 4 square root of 6 times 3 square root of 2, so it's going to be plus 4 times 3 is 12. 6 times 2 is 12. Make sure I did that right. Yep, 12 and 12. And then my inner, now notice there's a subtraction sign here. So I need to make sure I'm multiplying the negative. Negative 3 square root of 2 times 4 square root of 6. So that's going to be negative 3 times 4, which is 12. And then 2 times 6, which is 12. Square root of 2 times square root of 6, which is 12. And then this is a minus, so negative 3 times positive 3, that's going to be negative 9. And then square root of 2 times square root of 2 is going to be square root of 4. After you do that, this is when the magic comes. This is what I like to call magic, because you're going to see how when you have perfect squares, how things simplify, and that's how you end up with a rational denominator. So let's go ahead and do the numerator first. So I know that the square root of 6 is a perfect square. The square root of 6 is 6. So I'm going to say 12 times 6. I'm going to simplify that in the next step. Plus, I've got 9 times the square root of 12. Let's go ahead and break down 12. So square root, the factors of 12, or 4 times 3. I know that 4 is a perfect square, so I can take the square root of 4. That breaks down to 2 times 2. So I know that the square root of 4 is going to be 2. So I'm going to have 9 times 2, and then the square root of 3 stays inside the radical, because that's not a perfect square. Plus 20, and I'm also going to say 20 times 2. That's the square root of 3 as well. I know that because they both have the same square root of 12. Plus 15 times the square root of 4, which we already said was 2. So 15 times 2. So in our next step, you simplify all that, you multiply. below, you've got 16 times square root of 36. Square root of 36 is 6. So it's going to be 16 times 6. Now look here. This says 12 square root of 2 minus 12 square root of 2. What's going to happen is this is a positive, this is a minus. 12 minus 12 is going to be 0. So this actually ends up being plus a 0. And then you've got minus 9 square root of 4, which is 2. So 9 times 2. So now if you notice in our denominator, we've got 16 times 6 plus 9 times 2. So get your calculator out, and you know that 16 times 6 is 96. So in our denominator, we know we're going to have 96 minus 18. And then, of course, you've got to simplify your numerator. I'm going to let you take it away from there and keep solving it. Okay? And then, of course, 96 minus 18, go ahead and finish solving that. I hope this problem helped you. Thank you for your patience and waiting for it. And let me know if you have any other questions. You know what? Let's just finish working it out. All right, let's go ahead. 12 times 6 is 70. No, it's not. What's 12 times 6, y'all? 72. 12 times 6 is 72. Plus 9 times 2, which is 18. Square root of 3. Plus 40. Square root of 3. Plus 30. All over 96 minus 18, which is 78. And then I do have like terms, meaning they have the same radicals. So all I have to do is add the 18 and the 40 together. So that's going to be 58. So my final answer is going to be 72 plus 58. Oh, that's not my final answer. Square root of 3 plus 30 all over 78. That's not my final answer because I noticed that I've got a 30 here and I've got a 72 here. So I can combine those. Those are also like terms. So I'm going to do 72 plus 30. So 72 plus 30, I get 102. So that's going to be 102 plus 58 square root of 3 all over 78. All right, now that's my final answer. So to recap, we started at the beginning. We multiplied your denominator by its conjugate, but whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do it to the numerator to keep the fraction even. So we use FOIL, that's what all these lines were, the distributive property, to distribute it out, okay? And that's how we got all of these answers here. Always check my math. I'm only human, so, you know, I can make mistakes too. And then what I did here was I simplified my radicals, right? We know that 12 breaks down to 2 square root of 3 because the square root of 4 is 2, so that comes out of the radical. And that's how we ended up with these 2 square root of 3. So you still have your number times 2 square root of 3 plus 15 times square root of 4, which is 2. And we did the same thing with our denominator. We noticed that these two, they had the square root of 12, they're like terms, so all I had to do was subtract their coefficients, which was 0. So that's 0 square root of 12, which is still 0. And then we simplified our denominator. And then I came down here and I simplified the numerator. And then we combined like terms, okay? Thank you for watching and let me know if you have any questions.